Use your camera, guys. All right. So, okay, so today we're gonna carry on with the speaking section, but we're gonna move on to a different task. So remember that in the speaking session, we got 4 tasks. So we have we did okay, I have a message. Okay, so we did task 2 on Tuesday, and you have practiced this yesterday with Dre, right? So today we're gonna move on to question 3, and here it is. So this question is actually a bit different than question 2, because this time you will not have that casual content anymore. It's gonna get academic from now on. So here you will see some new words. Maybe you're gonna be talking about like more serious stuff. So you may find some new words and everything, but I don't think it's really gonna be that hard. So it's not rocket science still. I think you guys can do it. So what exactly will you guys need to do here? So first, you will read a short passage, something like this long, not that long to be honest. And then you will listen to, in this case, not a conversation anymore, but you will listen to a lecture. So anybody knows what a lecture is? Can anybody tell me what a lecture is? No? Well, a lecture is pretty much a class. It's a college class. That's one way to see it. So a lecture is a, like the thing that we're having right now, it could count as a lecture. Is a speaker, someone, probably a professor, explaining a topic. So the professor could be explaining anything at all, and it's going to be a lecture. So you will listen to that lecture, and then you will be given again 30 seconds to prepare your response, the same time that you had in the previous one. 30 seconds to prepare, and then 60 seconds or 1 minute to speak. Okay, so the structure is kind of the same. You read something, you listen to something, 30 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to speak. Actually, the structure, like the technical structure, is the same one. Now, regarding content, that's when it gets different. So let's talk about what you will be reading. So in the article or the passage, whatever you want to call it, you will find this. First, you will see a title that you always have to read, guys. So the first tip I'll give you now for this task is make sure to read the title. Now, I know that I always say that, but in this case particularly, it's way more important for you guys to read the title than it was for all the other questions. Why, you may be asking? Because the title is not a summary, it's not something that's up in the air. In this case, the title is your topic, exactly like that. And it's not just a summary of the topic, it's a term, okay? It's a key term, we could call it. So it's something that you guys want to take notes on, that you want to remember, and that you for sure want to mention in your response. So in your response, there's no other way than mentioning this behavior modification or whatever it is that you have in the title. Okay, so the first thing you guys have to do in this task is you read the title. Maybe take some notes on what that is. Now, what you will read here is a short explanation on what this is, on what the topic will be. There are many things that you could have here, like you could have an example, maybe you could have even some data, or like just a brief explanation of what this topic is. But the most important part, and the thing that I want you guys to focus on, is the definition of this topic. So you will always find a definition here, and that's what your job is. Okay, here when you're reading, you need to make sure that you read the title and that you find out what that means. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking for the definition of behavior modification or whatever you have in the title in the text. So that's your job. You find the definition. Now, once you've done that, then you will move on to the lecture. In the lecture, the professor will be explaining a bit more on the same topic. So the topic will be the same. The professor will still be talking about behavior modification, but the professor, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be giving you real world examples, like when we see behavior modification in the real world, in action. So in a lecture, you will find some applications of this concept, like maybe kids do this, or maybe older people do that, or maybe we have an animal that changes their behavior. I don't know, but you will have a real world example of that concept, okay? So that's pretty much it. And then you have to summarize everything like a reporter would do it. You have to say something like, so in the reading passage, it is described that behavior modification is this. And then you say something like, furthermore, the professor illustrates it with the example of, and then you tell me what the example is. So that's how your response is going to be looking like. Okay, so that okay so far? Any questions? Okay, good. Now let's talk about the topics that you can find. So what topics are you going to be encountering here in this task? So the most common ones are these ones, the first three ones: psychology topics, biology topics, or business topics. That's like 90% of the cases you will find one of these three. However, there are some cases in which, unfortunately, you may find some other, topics in other areas like art or history or literature, perhaps sociology, geology, design, interior design. So there are other topics that you, I'm not gonna lie, may find, but it's, chances are you will be having one of these three. So I wouldn't really bother practicing with these ones because it's probably not gonna be part of your questions unless you have, I don't know, unless it's like one of those extraordinary cases, which is probably not gonna be, So psychology, biology, or business. Now, if you have a psychology topic, it'll probably be about, the mind. So it's about human beings, how we experience certain things, how we process emotions, how we interact with each other, how we process experiences, how we learn, all that kind of stuff you will find in psychology topics. I gotta say that personally, I think this one is the easiest one because of the vocabulary, mainly. So, and also because of the examples, you will see. Now, you may also have a biology topic, which is not as easy as the psychology one. So in this case, they will be talking about living organisms. It could be plants, animals, rarely human beings. And it's about how they organize, how they reproduce, their lab processes, etc. So it's a bit harder because of the terms they use. So you may find some difficult to pronounce words here, but again, it's just that you listen to them, take notes on how to spell them maybe, and then that you repeat whatever they have said. And finally, business, which is kind of easy. Again, it's mostly about marketing, like marketing strategies or advertising techniques, that kind of stuff. Not that hard as well. I would say that business and psychology are your best allies. Okay, so is that okay now? Any questions about the topics? Okay. Now, another thing you guys want to know. All right, no, first let's try to do this. So we're going to take this as an example. This is the first task that we're going to be working on. So, okay, so can anybody please read this? Can I have someone reading this?
I can.
Okay, go ahead.
Behavior modification. Individuals often modify their behavior based on what they have learned about the possible consequences of their actions. Learns through experience that a certain behavior results in pleasant consequences. That behavior is likely to be repeated. An unpleasant consequence is, on the other hand, discourage further repetition of the behavior. While behavior modification can be observed in experiments, It also occurs frequently in everyday settings, when individuals change their behavior based on what they have learned about the consequences of that behavior.
Okay, thanks so much, Joshua. So now that we have read this, can anyone tell me what the definition of behavior modification is? So what's behavior modification? In one sentence. Has anybody got it yet? Where do we have the definition of the topic? Really? Maybe, I don't know. Nicole, what do you think? Were you able to find the definition?
I don't know.
No? Hey, what about you, Oscar? Have you got it?
Perhaps it's in the first sentence, behavior modification can be individual often modify the behavior based on what they have learned about the possible consequences.
Great, that's it. So yeah, that's the definition. That's what behavior modification is. It's when individuals modify their behavior based on what they've learned about the possible consequences of their actions. So we got it in the first line, and I think we kind of also got it in the last one, when individuals change their behavior based on what they've learned. So it's kind of the same thing. We got two definitions, but whichever you choose, whichever you think is easier, you can go for that one. Now, it's not always going to be the first line, okay? Don't let that trick you in. It could be halfway through, it could be at the end. I don't know where it's going to be, but it'll be there, okay? And your job is to find it. Sometimes you will have some red flags like this is called, or this is defined as, or we psychologists define this as. So sometimes you will have one of those red flags, and it's going to be easier for you guys to identify where that is. But even if you don't have that, I think it's kind of, practicing and getting used to finding that definition. All right, so this is behavior modification. Now we're going to listen to the lecture now, and you will see that the professor will illustrate this concept. So the professor will provide some real-world examples about this topic. So how individuals modify their behavior. Okay, another thing. The number of examples that you will have in the lecture is also predictable. You know how many examples you will have depending on the topic that you get. So is this a psychology, biology, or business topic? Or maybe, I don't know, a different topic. What's this? What do you guys think?
It's a psychology topic.
Great, it is a psychology topic. So it's talking about behavior, about how we behave, right? So it is probably about psychology. So if you have a psychology topic, you will always have just one example. Okay, I'm gonna write it down here. One example. If you have a biology topic though, you will have two examples. And the same goes for business topics. So only if it's a psychology topic will you have one example, but if it's biology or business, you will always have two. Now, getting more in depth about that. Usually when you have one example and it's a psychology topic, the example is going to be kind of like a story. So it will be sort of like the professor telling a story. So it could be a personal story from the professor's own experience, own life, something like, so when I was younger, I used to modify my behavior in this way, and I used to do this, and this happened, and that's how behavior modification works. Or it could be a story, I don't know, from a friend, maybe of the professors, or sometimes it's a more general example, something about as people in general. So it could be about how kids do this, or how elderly people do that. So it could be a more general example, but it's always kind of in the form of a story. Or sometimes I have to say I have also seen some experiments in there. So it could be something like, so two groups of people were put in this room, and this happened, and they were asked to do this, and blah, blah, blah. So this is how behavior modification works. So it could be one of those two options. Either it's a story or an experiment. Now, in case you have one example and it's a psychology topic, the main thing that I want you guys to look at is the connection between ideas, because all the ideas are going to be connected. I don't know how you could have before and after relationships, or cause effect relationships, like this happens because of this reason. Or if it's an experiment, then you could have like a sequence of events, like first, people were asked to do this. Second, the researcher has been told to do that. So pay attention to the relationship of ideas. That's the biggest thing I could tell you. Look for transitions that are like your red flags, that are going to give you an idea of how things are connected, So if you see something like, however, you know that it's a contradiction. If you see something like, or if you hear something like second or afterwards, then it's the steps of a process. So pay attention to those. If you have biology or business, then you will have two examples, as I was saying. Usually when it's biology, it's two animals or two plants. So it's like camouflage. That may be your topic. And here you have an explanation on what camouflage is. And then you have two animals that do that, two animals that with camouflage. Or you could have, if it's business, then maybe you have something like well, I don't know, what have you, what could it be? Like franchising, yeah, let's go with that. And then you have two companies that do that. So it's probably gonna be like that, all right? So in this case, since it's a psychology example, we're gonna just listen to one example. I'm sorry, since it's a psychology topic, we're gonna listen to one example. And I want you guys to pay attention for the information that illustrates this. You know that you only have 60 seconds to speak, so you gotta kind of prioritize and focus on what's relevant. So the information that is relevant is not gonna be the details, but the things that are closely related to the definition. So you wanna pay attention to what individuals are we looking at, or what behavior are we looking at, or what consequences or what actions are we talking about? So those questions are the ones that you have to ask yourself, right? So, okay, you know this, right? Behavior modification is when individuals modify their behavior based on what they've learned about the consequences of their actions. So pay attention to the example. Any questions before we listen to the lecture? Okay. So please get a piece of paper if you don't have one, because I'm gonna play it right out. Okay. All right. So here it goes.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic in a psychology class. This happens all the time with kids in schools. Say there's a little boy or girl who's just starting school. Well, they're not really used to the rules about proper behavior for a classroom. So at the beginning they might, interrupt the teacher, walk around the classroom when they're supposed to be sitting down. Just misbehaving in general. Okay, but what happens? Well, the teacher gets angry with them when they act this way. They might get punished. They have to sit at their desks. When everyone else is allowed to go outside and play. And they certainly don't like that. Soon, they'll learn that this kind of behavior gets them in trouble. They'll also learn that when they raise their hand to talk to the teacher and sit quietly and pay attention during class, they're rewarded. The teacher tells them she's proud of them and maybe puts little happy face stickers on their homework. Now that their behavior gets a good reaction from the teacher, the kids learn to always act this way in class and not behave the way they used to. Using the example from the lecture, explain what behavior modification is and how it works.
Okay, guys. So actually here I have the transcript of the lecture. So we're going to analyze what that was about. So here it is. Now, can anybody tell me how the professor illustrates the concept of behavior modification? Like, when do we see behavior modification?
Can I answer, teacher?
Yes, of course.
Well, the professor explains that there is a behavior modification when there are consequences like punishment or rewards. And it depends of the behavior of in this case, of the kids. It's like, he explains that when the kids have bad behavior, they are punished, and when they have good behavior, they are rewarded. So they learn how to have more rewards than punishment. So they have a new kind of behavior.
Okay, so great, Rosario. That was perfect. Really, I think that could have made a perfect response. So I like that you focus on what's relevant, and that's exactly what you guys have to do. You know how, if you think about it, Rosario wasn't really talking about what they do to misbehave, like whether they don't sit quietly, whether they're not paying attention, or whether the professor gives them like happy face stickers or tells them that she's proud. So Rosario didn't go for the details, she went directly to what's important, which is also, if you think about it, like how ideas are connected, So we have two causes and effect relationship. Like if kids misbehave, they get punished. And if kids behave well, as Rosario said, they get rewarded. So that's cause and effect. And we also have like a sequence of events, right? Because at the beginning, first thing, they misbehave. As a result of that, they get punished. Second thing, they behave well, they get rewarded. And finally, they learn, and that's the biggest, that's how everything's related, because they are learning based on what has happened, based on the consequences that their actions have had. So that's exactly what you guys have to do in your response. You want to, when you're listening, focus on those important ideas, and also try to connect them to the definition of behavior modification. So if you can, in your response, kind of briefly mention, so when you're talking about the example, you say, so that's how kids change their behavior based on what they have learned in class, or based on their cause or the consequences of their actions in class. So if you're kind of able to do that, then it'll be great, because again, let's read the question now. It is using the example from the lecture, explain in the topic, right? So even the question is kind of connected, it doesn't say first tell me what behavior modification is and then summarize the example. It says tell me what behavior modification is using the example. So you gotta connect everything. So Okay, so any questions about the lecture? We're gonna see how to respond now. Okay, so we're gonna see how to respond. Now, I have two templates. So in case you got one example, you need this one. And in case you got two, you need this other one. Right now we just have one, so let's work with this. We're gonna do another example with two as well. You're gonna see. So, okay. So the same thing that I said for the previous question, I don't know if you guys remember, but I said the listening part will always be more important than the reading, because the reading, anybody can do it, right? You can read and then repeat the same thing or take notes, copy and paste. But the lecture, you know, listening and then like summarizing and telling it in your own words, that's the harder part. And that's what they want. Okay, so you always will have to talk more about the lecture or more about the listening than you do for the reading. So at the beginning, you need a short introduction, which is providing context and summarizing the reading. I don't want you exactly to summarize everything, but all I want you guys to do is mention the definition in one sentence, okay? So the same as you did for the previous task. Summarize the reading in one sentence. So you're gonna say something like, according to the passage, behavior modification is when individuals change their behavior based on the consequences of their actions. Okay, so sweet and fast. And that's gonna be your introduction. All right, make sure to use those, to give them credit. You know, don't take the credit yourself. If you just say, okay, so behavior modification is this and that. If you avoid, like skip this part here, then you're telling it like you were the one saying it, you know, and you're not the one that's discovering that. So make sure that you say something like, according to the reading passage, or something like, the reading passage describes behavior modification as, I don't know, the phenomenon in which individuals do this. Okay, so make sure to give them credit and make sure to also make it as fast as you can. 15 seconds is the maximum that you can spend there. Next thing you do is you move on to the lecture. So you can say something, you need a transition, okay? Transitions are important. They form the structure of your response. So you need a transition, something like, furthermore, the professor illustrates this with the example of, or if you want to sound fancier, you can say something like, in the lecture, the professor further illustrates this concept by providing the example of, and then you just summarize the example, okay? What Rosario did. So you say something, the example of kids in school. And then you use those reporting matters, right? You could say something like, the professor explains that when kids misbehave in school, they get punished. On the other hand, when they behave sorry. So that's pretty much it, okay? Yeah, I'm not going for I'm so sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on with my connection today, but I think I was able to fix it. I changed the Wi-Fi red, and I hope it's better now. You guys there? Can you hear me? Oh yeah, there you are. Thank you so much. Okay, so I don't know where we left off, but that's what I was saying, the beginning, your short introduction, according to the passage, behavior modification is when individuals change their behavior based on the consequences of their actions. In the lecture, the professor illustrates this concept with the example of kids in school. He explains that when kids misbehave, they get punished. On the other hand, when they behave well and they do what they're supposed to do, they get rewarded. I don't know, afterwards, they start learning how to get more rewards than they get punishment. And finally, they learn based on the consequences of their previous actions. Okay, so that's it. You focus on what's relevant, on what's related to the definition. You make sure to use a transition to spend less time here in the introduction. Here are some optional things you can do. In case it's a person, you could say, as the passage mentions, and add something else, something like, as the passage mentions, when they, I don't know, when the behavior results implicit consequences, the behavior is likely to be repeated, just like happens with kids. And then you can, kind of try to connect ideas and say, with kids, since, I don't know, they repeat the actions that have gotten them like happy face stickers and, I don't know, nice words from the teacher and everything. So you can try to do that, but I wouldn't say it's that important that you mention anything but the definition from the reading. So that's the safest thing, If you got extra time, you can say something like, so that's how the professor illustrates the topic, or so that's how, by using the example of kids in school, the professor demonstrates behavior modification. Okay, so not that long, really. I think you can even finish in less than 60 seconds, but that's the way to do it. Okay, so any questions now? Any questions about the response, the task, anything at all? All right, guys, so you're up now. You're gonna do it. We're gonna try to do a business one. So when you have business, usually you have two examples, but they may not be that separated. It could be one example divided into two parts. So you will know what I mean in a bit. Let me show you. We're gonna be doing this one here. Another thing I wanted to say, guys, make sure to check out some vocabulary for, especially when you have business, so that you don't get caught by surprise. You're not like, okay, so what does franchising mean? Or how do you pronounce merchandising? So you can know how to use those words. You can have appropriate word choice. So instead of saying people, you're gonna say customers. Or instead of saying things, you're gonna say products, So check out some vocabulary. It'll help you big time. All right, let me. Okay, guys. So here's the reading. You know what you're looking for. You got the title, target marketing. Remember, it's not a summary, it's the topic. So take notes on that, and you want to find the definition of that. So I'll give you all 50 seconds to read this, starting now. Okay, guys. So now I'm gonna play the lecture. Make sure to take some notes and look for the information that exemplifies this. So here it goes. Here you go.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a marketing class.
Nowadays, something you notice more and more is television commercials that are made specifically for certain television programs. So, let's say a company wants to sell a telephone, a cell phone. Now, during TV shows that young people watch, shows with pop music or teen serials, they create a commercial that emphasizes how fun the phone is. The phone has bright colors, and they show kids having a good time with their friends. And, well, the company wants the kids watching TV at this time to want to buy this phone that's made especially for them. But the same company will make a different commercial to be shown during, say, a program about business or a business news show. Now, for this group of people, business people, the company will have to show how efficient their phone is, how it can handle all business easily, and maybe even save money. And here's the thing. It's basically the same phone. The company has just made two different commercials to appeal to different groups of people.
Using the professor's examples, explain the advertising technique of target marketing.
Okay, guys. So read the question too, explain the advertising technique of target marketing. So you kind of have the definition in there as well. Now I'll give you all 30 seconds to prepare your response, so you can start preparing. Okay, guys. So now I know that in this case, business topic, we got kind of two examples, right? So it's the same thing, it's still the same thing. You start the same way. You say, according to the reading passage, target marketing is defined as, and then you say in the lecture, the professor illustrates the concept with the example of. So the only difference would be that you add these two transitions, like first and furthermore, or on the other hand, if you want, to separate the two examples, right? So you say first, and then you go with the first one, and then you say furthermore, and then you go with the second example. If they are closely related, you can kind of put them together as well, but it depends. So just make sure to use transitions, that's the thing. Okay, guys, so will anybody want to try? Is anybody feeling ready and would want to give it a shot? Great, Ariel. Okay, you want me to leave you with a template? Do you need it on the screen or? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can now.
I'm sorry. Can you show me the template, please?
Yes, of course. So, all right, I think it'll be just this one, but we're gonna add two. I don't know. Okay, so of course, if it's a he, then you gotta change that, but I think this will do it. Okay, so I'm gonna. All right, so here we go now.
Okay, let me know when to start.
All right, sorry. Here. Okay, so you can start now.
Okay, according to the passage, target marketing is the strategy of advertising to smaller audiences, which are most likely to be interested in the product offered. In the lecture, the professor further illustrates this concept by providing the following examples. Using a cell phone commercial. First, he explains that targeting young people, the commercial should feature all should show all the features that young people will be interested in during the programs that kids and young people would watch. And furthermore, he describes another example using another audience target audience. It will be the business people that the commercials should show the features the cell phone will use in their work. Oh damn it, I missed the time.
Okay, great. No, I think timing was also good. I like that you spent exactly 15 seconds in the intro, and then you dedicated that to talk about the lecture. So you just nailed it. I think that was awesome. Really, I like the verbs you're using. He explains like that even better than describes. We can change it. What else? I like that you're kind of trying to add the vocabulary. Like he explains this with a different target audience. So good vocabulary to use here. What I can tell you, in case the two examples are related, you can at the beginning provide a bit of context, because here you're mentioning the phone, but I wasn't exactly what phone you were talking about. So if you're able to briefly summarize what the overall example is, like providing the example of a company that wants to advertise a phone. So first she mentions that if they want to do it, or if their target audience is younger people, they will do it, and then you say what you said. So maybe here a bit of context of how the example or what the example is about. But I think you're doing great. It was your first time, and it was really, really good. So what can I say?
Thank you.
All right, guys. Anybody else would like to try? One more. Maybe if we hurry up, we can do another example. You want to do that? Yeah, want to do another one? Or
Maybe another example.
okay, let's do another one. Yeah, I think it'll help you. So let's do this one here. Okay, guys, so okay, so here's the reading. You got 50 seconds to read. Okay. Now let's listen to the lecture.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a psychology class.
Okay, so this comes up a lot when people make career decisions. A friend of mine from college always wanted to be a film reviewer. He was a film major and he loved movies. Most of all, he loved to write about movies. So when he graduated, he looked for a job as a film reviewer for a newspaper because, as a film reviewer, he'd get to see films for free and would be paid to write about them. That's what he loved. But he couldn't find a job as a film reviewer. So he took a position as a news reporter instead for a newspaper, investigating stories, writing about events, what news reporters do. Now, at first, my friend wasn't sure he'd be any good at this. He'd never been a news reporter before. But eventually, he adjusted and gained confidence, and he got used to the job. And he realized he was actually a pretty good reporter. Anyway, here's the thing. After a few years, the film reviewer for the newspaper where he worked quit, and my friend was offered her job. This was his dream, right? His opportunity to be a film reviewer had finally come, and the new job would actually pay more, too. But did he take the job? Nope, he turned it down. He told me he'd gotten used to being a news reporter, and he just didn't want to try something else. It seemed like too big of a change since, there was a chance that the new job might not work out.
Using the example from the lecture, explain the comfort zone bias.
Okay. So now you have 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay. So who would like to go this time? Okay, sorry. I was saying, Rosario, do you think?
Okay, teacher.
Okay, so you can start now.
Okay. According to the reading passage, comfort zone bias is when people stay in comfort zone in order to avoid risk and don't feel insecure about trying new things. Thank you. Then the professor explains in the listening that first people gain confidence and learn about something and they get secure about it. And when they have the opportunity to change and learn new things, they usually get scared and they don't want to try these new things, no matter if it was their dream or it was something that they really want.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I think that was actually good, but I don't know. I'm not sure if that's exactly what they're asking. So your definition was clear. It was maybe a bit too much. You were explaining more, but that's okay because you made it on time. Now, regarding the examples, that's what's worrying me. The examples are always going to be specific, you know, and you got to keep it that way. In your response, you changed it. I mean, like you generalize it, you know, the concept. I did that, but great. Now, however, what you have to do here is if they're telling the story of someone, you need to make sure that you tell the same story. So you want to say something like this concept by providing the example of a friend of his and how he wanted to be a film reviewer, and then you need the details, okay?
Okay.
So that's the only thing, because everything you said is true, you know, and it's accurate, but you need to tell it the same way that the professor tells the stories. You just need to mention that, even if you have names, you can mention them. Film reviewer, news reporter, those details need to be there, okay?
Okay. And teacher, this is, I mean, how can I recognize that I have to say, like the first example, something general, or like this detail?
It's always the exact same thing that the professor says. So if the professor is giving a general example, like the one about kids, then you have to do it the same way, but you have to mention kids and everything. Now the professor is telling the story of one person specifically, and you need to focus on that.
Okay, teacher.
It's paraphrasing it's repeating what the professor says, but saying, you know, the professor exemplifies this with the example of, and then you tell the same story.
Okay.
So careful, guys, with that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, guys. Do you guys have any questions about the task, about this, what we've seen today? Nope. Okay, then. So please, before you leave, I just started today's survey. So could you please answer those questions before you go? Okay, guys. So thanks so much. I'll see you all next class.
Thank you, teacher. Have a good night.
Thank you, teacher.
Thank you,
Bye.
teacher. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye, teacher. Thank you.